Have you ever wanted to create a masterpiece for yourself to enjoy, or wanted to write a bestseller? Well, I have. When I was first told about the 20% Project, my first ideas were taking photos of animals and nature. The more I thought about it, the due date for the topic proposal was coming up, and I started to think about possibly writing about my adventures instead of taking photos. The more I thought about it, the more I started to realize I wanted to write. After I finally decided I was going to write a book, I had so many good ideas, and I just had this unforgettable energy and passion towards my new book. The characters I came up with were inspired by my favorite series, the Nancy Drew books. I created a very strong friendship between Mia and Nancy, like the friendship Nancy had with George and Bess. I was also inspired by my everyday life and my experiences. Writing down ideas was definitely harder than just thinking of them. I had all these visions of what I wanted my book to look like, but when I started to write down ideas, everything just collapsed, and I felt like I was starting from scratch. First, I picked a notebook that I had never used, and in the beginning of the project, I would just sit down and start writing. I never really had any outlines, but I knew overall what I wanted it to be about. And in the start of the project, I would just sit down and start writing, and begin writing. When I would come back to the book, I would just continue from where I left off. This process worked for the first chapter, but by the second chapter, I had too many ideas and not enough room. I would have all these. My mind was crowded like Santa's mailbox during the holiday season, but I had no idea where I wanted these events to happen. And by the second chapter, I just gave up. I've been a youth mentor for a long time, and until I wrote through my book was just a bunch of untied strings and a bracelet. My original plan was to have Alan Bradley, the author of The Fog and the Loose Books, being a mentor. In the end, Barbara Carlson was the mentor. She was very helpful, and we got a lot done when I met with her. She gave me lots of advice, and in the first meeting, we really just worked on outlines. If I learned anything from her, it was that one should write a book for themselves, a book that they like. I also learned that you need to make an outline before you can really start writing. The first real step to writing my book was knowing the characters, settings, and problems I wanted. The summaries I wrote for all 12 chapters of my book were only 3 to 4 sentences, but they gave me guidelines to follow when I was writing. I knew what needed to happen in each chapter and what I would need to add in order to set it for the next chapter. After I finished the chapter summaries, I wasn't sure what my next step was. When we had to research something on our project for our blog, I finally decided to research how to edit a book. I discovered that making a character reference sheet helps keep track of characters and their actions. I started to make my character reference sheet, but soon I was lost. This is my character reference sheet. I created many characters in my book, and I tried to include everyone who I thought would play a role or have a speaking part in my book. In my second meeting with my mentor, she helped me finish my reference sheet, and she told me when writing, it should sound logical. I fixed some parts on my chapter summaries, and then my next step was to simply start writing. Since I already wrote part of my first chapter, and part of my second, I decided to just start with my third chapter. My third chapter was easier to write in the sense that I knew what it needed to be about, but coming up with the events was still difficult. Now I'm going to read you the chapter summary for chapter 3. Chapter 3. We meet again. Mia and her family go out to dinner with their grandparents. John, once again, tries to steal ginger ale but fails. He's caught by a group of thieves, their leader being a boy named James. John spills the beans while trying to impress them about the 4-H pigs and the money the kids make at auction. James forces John to be part of his team to make some money by stealing the pigs and selling them as the kids before the actual auction, claiming John can be a father to Nancy again. I chose the title, We Meet Again, because John, Nancy's father, meets ginger ale for the second time in a second attempt to steal her. John is stealing ginger ale because Nancy wants to create a mystery for Mia to solve during the summer so she can discover her passion. Because John wants to be a great father to Nancy, he agrees. Now I'm going to read you a passage from my book. This passage is part of the third chapter, and it's probably one of my favorite parts I've written so far. Cameron just loved to rub things in my face. She liked to show off how close Nellie and her were, whereas I just hated the dog. She showed how responsible she was by always cleaning her room and never losing her personal belongings. She even loved to clean up after our dog. She already told me she hates doing it, but in front of my parents, she pretends she loves being responsible. All these precious Cameron moments added for Christmas and birthday presents, and in the end, she always gets more things than I did. I always get in trouble. I already know how unfair life is, so I'm not going to complain. I always get in trouble for every little thing she does when I never do a thing. I already figure she'll make fun of me when I get braces and if I get glasses, but in front of my parents, she'll be very supportive. I went to grab my shoes, changing out my sister, giving my dog sweet sayings like, "Oh, Nellie, you're such an angel." When I picked up my shoes, I realized they were soaked in water. 1, it wasn't that cold out, so I figured wearing black sandals wouldn't be the end of my life. 2, I already knew who soaked my sandals, Cameron. And 3, she had soaked my shoes because she missed her play date with her best friend Erin because I couldn't find my chicken. I glared at her. She smirked an unmistakable smirk, but to my parents, it was just a simple smile. Chapter 3 really helped show the relationship between Cameron and Mia. In the end of the book, I plan to make them be best friends, but for now, they are enemies. The two girls have a similar relationship to the relationship with Oaktown and Oakville. They are two cities, but one has crime and the other doesn't. It would be hard to determine which of the sisters is at fault for their bitter relationship, but with the sisters and cities, there's this relationship like a civil smile. There's this relationship like a civil smile that keeps them connected. Both have to pretend to like each other, but they really don't. Mia says, I wouldn't call us close, and I wouldn't say I'm jealous of her. I would call us sisters, and that's that. For my project, we had a blog. My blog was called Annika's Mystery Blog. I kept track of everything I was doing in my blog. I definitely had many roadblocks, like wanting to quit, because I was out of ideas. I really just had to have the mentality to keep going and let the ideas come to me over time. I think I took a long time to even get my chapter summaries done, because the ideas weren't coming to me as fast as I would have liked them to. Here ends my story, The 20% Project, but it is really the beginning of my book and the beginning of more challenges, goals, and life lessons. Throughout the 20% project, I gave up and I started again over and over. I knew from the beginning I would have difficulties coming up with ideas and writing them down. Some people told me through the proposal guidelines feedback I shouldn't give up, and I thought to myself, why would I give up? I soon realized they were right, and giving up seemed like the best solution. And I definitely had bigger goals that seemed possible at the start of the project, but now they seem distant. If I were to have a chance at this project again, I would want to write again. I like writing, and I think coming up with new ideas for books would be really fun. I wouldn't want to write a mystery book though. I would want to write about something else. All in all though, my book became my passion, and I learned it's about the process, or the steps you take to get there, not the final project. I took many wrong turns in this project, and many right turns as well. I think I've come to realize my book isn't perfect, and it's probably not a bestseller, but that doesn't mean it can't be. I did get 3 chapters completely finished, and that is an accomplishment that I never thought would happen in the middle of the book.